Hello and welcome. I'm already out of energy. To Radio Free Nintendo. It is April 9th, 2026. This is our first episode in April because last week we missed it. I'll get to that in a second. I'm joined today by the returning Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
I guess I'm technically also the returning James Jones. And we are joined by the most esteemed guest, former RFN host, Jonathan Metz.
Hello, the returning Johnny Metz.
Yeah, everyone's returning today. It's great.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Without getting into too much detail, as you all know, Guillaume is in Japan, and so this is the third episode he was gonna miss. I think second. This is the second episode he was gonna miss. This was the first episode, the third episode that I'm editing, or would have been. But last week, unfortunately, both Greg and John had events that made them unavailable to record. They both kind of hit at the same time. So as I was planning to get a guest in to fill for Guillaume, suddenly I had to find two more guests in like a 2-day window. And I was just like, this is not going to happen. This is not a thing that is going to happen. So I'm pulling the string on this one. But Greg, I'm glad to have you back. Johnny, I'm very pleased. Very pleased you were able to join us.
My pleasure.
John is still out dealing with stuff right now. Hopefully he will be back next week. I don't have a positive commitment on that, but he and I have spoken about it a little bit. That's sort of the timeline he told me to anticipate. This is episode 670, and we're going to get right in. Well, we're not right into it. I've already spent. The thing is, I'm making it take longer by saying I didn't get right into it. 970. Episode 670. I don't want to deal with this 1,000 bullshit. I'm rolling it back. What if we just do 999 then go back to 1? Legitimately, y'all don't understand, but episode 1000 is going to fuck up like the file naming convention. This is a deeply James kind of thought.
E1K. Is that what we're talking about?
Maybe. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what 1000 is going to do to the lexicographic ordering of the file folder. Well, this is not a concern humans should have.
Can't speak to that, but I do know for episode 999, I know what retroactive you guys are doing.
Oh! I hadn't even thought of that. Holy shit.
No, so someone requested music from the pertinent game years ago in anticipation of that, so it's booked. It's done.
So what we're doing is Virtue's Last Reward is what Johnny is saying. Exactly. We're gonna get in there and make a fuck. I haven't played 999 in forever. And the non-DS version of that game has a lot of the quality of life stuff from Virtue's Last Reward that makes 999. So you can just skip around the timeline in VLR. In 999, you had to play that shit again. Which meant you spent like 80% of your playtime with that game in Fast Forward.
Well, Bravely Default.
Yeah, but Bravely Default is fine with that in a weird way. Because it had all the mechanics to make that happen. In 999, you had to hold a button down. It was really annoying.
Well, I've never played 999, so
it's great.
It's great. I might follow along at home.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So that solves a problem I didn't know I have, but now I have a problem I do know I have, which is what do I do with 1000? I got 30 weeks to figure that out. I got basically 7 or 8 months, which means I'm going to forget about it for the next 5 and then have a panic attack for the following 3. Look forward to that.
Well, it's probably not too soon for the listeners to, send in ideas for what they think you should do.
Save me from my indecision. What I'm going to do for episode 1000 is go back to Japan like I did for episode 500. And make John record the Talk Nintendo podcast for 2 weeks.
NWR chat. Let's get
NWR chat. That's right. You're all right. That's Talk Nintendo's a different show altogether. Fuck. I am sorry, gentlemen. NWR chat. I fucked up the name of the show that resulted from John fucking up the name. My mistake. We're going to get to new. I can't believe it's been 400 episodes, and I still sit here and go, how? We're going to get to new business, and I'm going to let Johnny kick us off because he is the guest, and that is the way things roll around here.
Thank you. All right. Well, my hottest new business is ChainStaff. Have you guys heard about ChainStaff? Have you heard the good news about ChainStaff?
This is Mommy's best games, is it not?
Yes. So that's an indie developer. You know, it's not quite a one-man shop, but the head of the studio is Nathan Fouts, and he's like definitely the lead developer.
Yes.
And for this one, he had a lot of contract work and some help with music and a number of other things. But yeah, Nathan is a former guest of this show.
Yes.
Someone we met at PAX East a million years ago.
God, that was so long ago.
That might have been our first panel at PAX East. First
it
of 4 in a row.
Yes.
And that was the year that he was showing off Shoot 1 Up, which is a really fun vertical shoot 'em up game with a lot of weird ideas and very weird artwork too. And John, I remember, was also a big fan of Shoot 1 Up, and we played a lot of it at that event. And then he's like, "Oh, you like this? Let me show you a little demo I've got on the side over here." And that's when we got to try Grapple Buggy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nathan
for the Xbox Live Indie Arcade, when Microsoft used to segregate their indie staff off into this weird little ghetto, you had to download a special app for.
Yeah.
It was so weird.
Neil made a fun shout out to to Mommy's Best Games. Role in the deep lore of this podcast in his review, and I think Neil gave it a 9. So yeah, he really liked ChainStaff. I also really like ChainStaff so far. I've only got to spend about an hour with it because it came out yesterday. I've been super busy, but it is Mommy's Best Games has released 5 or 6 titles over that span of time, going back to Weapon of Choice, which is when I first heard about them. That's why I wanted to go meet him and play his new thing at PAX, is because I was like, oh, he made Weapon of Choice. And that was the original gotta play game for the Xbox Live Indie Game Studio Initiative. I forget the exact weird corporate business name that they had for it, but back on Xbox 360 they had Xbox Live Arcade, which was full of games from Capcom and Konami and EA, and there were some indie studios, but it was a lot of Double Fine and you're like very well-known Western and Eastern developers, but not a place you could publish an indie game. You had to basically have like a major publishing agreement with Microsoft already to make Xbox games in order to put a game on Xbox Live Arcade. And there were indie studios that would partner up with a publisher like Capcom, and that would be the way they got their small indie game onto XBLA. But there was separately a kind of obscure and not easy to use store on the 360 where you could get legit indie games. And like, I'm not going to say anybody could get a game on here, but if you have an initiative and some resources, you could pull it off. And there was some trash on there for sure. But there were a number of really wonderful gems. And for my money, Weapon of Choice, the absolute best game on that service ever released, and I think it was a launch title for the thing. It's like this modernized Contra game. It's a run and gun, action shooter. You jump around and you have these giant guns and bazookas and machine guns and flamethrowers and shit. And it does a thing, and I'm going to move on to ChainStaff very quickly, but I think you'll understand more about ChainStaff when I say that. To me, the thing that always struck me about Weapon of Choice and really all of Nathan's games is that when you first start playing it, it introduces you to like all these mechanics and these weird ideas that he's put into it, and it basically shows you that your character is very powerful and like has very versatile, can do all this crazy stuff, double jumps or grappling hooks, or like slows down time when a bullet comes near, and you just think, whoa, this game's going to be so easy. Like, how could you design something around a character who starts the game being this powerful? And I feel that way in almost all his games. Maybe not Pig Eat Ball, but I think all the other games I kind of felt that way. And he always delivers on a game that stretches you and challenges you and like makes you think about how to use these weird abilities. So, in a way, it's like I felt the same way about like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like very early in the game, you're given these tools that seem like out of whack with what the game is asking of you. And over the course of it, it turns out, oh yeah, they actually did think of some pretty wild stuff that requires you to put all these things together in a creative way. And like on a, in a two-dimensional game, I think ChainStaff and a lot of other Mommy's Best games, they kind of do the same thing. So in ChainStaff, the tutorial is like 5 minutes long, and it introduces you to like a dozen abilities with this character that seem like, it's like I can't believe he can do all this stuff. It seems kind of ridiculous. And then the game so far just seems like it definitely makes you use all of that, and it makes you think about what your character can do, and it definitely throws a lot of challenge at you. So that's very very fun for me to like kind of see what it brings and what it asks me to do with all these cool abilities. So Chainstaff is like like I said, it's a very Contra style game. It is the most of his games that's like Weapon of Choice. So it's kind of taking me back like almost 20 years back to when I first played that game on the 360. It is kind of like harkening back to kind of where this studio started, as far as I know. I think that was their first game, and it's definitely updated it in a lot of ways. But it's like a similar template. And in this case, you're playing as this soldier who was killed in the battlefield against these alien invaders, and some creature that spawned from the alien invasion like latched onto him and created a symbiotic, union. And so you play this like ripped soldier guy who just looks like one of the Contra guys, but he has this like alien bug sticking out of who's like eaten his head basically, and is like sitting on top of his shoulders with a big tail that comes out the back, and he's like latched onto his torso. So it looks like he has an alien. He looks like a dude with an alien head, basically, and like a weird tail coming out. It's very MTV in the 90s, like Liquid TV, Liquid Television, that kind of thing. And and he has a cool alien gun, that you can upgrade, and it does all this different stuff. But he has this alien weapon called the ChainStaff, which is this kind of living, uh, shape-shifting tool slash weapon. And the way it plays in the game, it's like a 2D action game. You're running around, jumping and climbing on stuff. But you can use the chain staff as a spear. You can charge it up and throw it as a very, very powerful spear with like a laser targeting system and everything. Or you can use it as a grappling hook, which I love, and you get all the swinging momentum and everything, and you can use it to climb up walls basically, and do a lot of ridiculous physicsy kind of stuff with this grappling hook. It's super super fun. And you can also like throw it in the ground and use it as a ladder or as a barrier against enemy projectiles. Or as like a jack to hold up, like if there's a big piston kind of block or something like that coming down from above, you can put this underneath it to prop it up so that you can safely get through. Which I would have loved in a lot of Contra levels, actually, now that I think about it. But anyway, it's very fast. It's the enemies are all these like very grotesque, weird alien creatures, like really creative, very colorful, and it's hard, but it's also very forgiving too. Like you have so many options. You can there's checkpoints in every level that you can fast travel among, so you can leave the stage and then come back to like the 3/4 point in the level, and the levels are pretty straightforward, but there are branching paths and a lot of secrets, and so you can kind of go back to levels and kind of go to the part of it that you want to explore and see if you can find something extra down there. So it's very friendly with stuff like that, and the checkpoints are pretty. I don't know if they're generous. I think they're fair. I think when they set you back, I've never felt like, oh my gosh, I have to go through all that again. It's like, nah, okay. There's a couple of enemies, and then I'm back at the part I had trouble with. Yeah, but it's super fun, and of course there's like a heavy metal soundtrack, nonstop, continuous through the whole thing, and it's not always crashing, super loud and super fast. It definitely gets like that for bosses and for big fights. But a lot of times, I've been kind of jamming to the music in the slower platforming part, so there's not necessarily enemies around, and I'm just sort of grappling around and looking for secrets. And it reminds me of what's the Double Fine game with Jack Black?
Oh,
The heavy metal game. Brutal
yeah.
Legend. Brutal Legend.
Yes.
It reminds me, so the soundtrack in general is kind of reminiscent of that game. And I remember in that game, I loved the parts where I was just exploring and not really doing what the game wanted me to do, but just sort of wandering around in all the in-between areas. And the heavy metal music would kind of like slow down and get more melodic, and it's, maybe sounds a little bit like the future in Bill and Ted. So I really like that part of the music too. So it's very dynamic. But yeah, it's one of his games for sure. It's got all the signatures that I've seen from playing all the other games, and I'm just having a blast with it. And I just feel like he makes these very mechanics dense 2D action games that really they stand out from all the rest. There's a lot of indie games that kind of at a glance look similar to this, and I think when you play these, they feel there's definitely more time and I think more creativity put into these than a lot of similar looking games. So yeah, I've been looking forward to it a long time, and I think it's pretty good so far.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was looking at the other stuff he's done since then. Yeah, you're right. He's done about 5 games, which if you think about how long it's been, seems like not that many, but it's a small team.
It's a very tiny studio. Yeah. It's Yeah.
Their website looks like it was last updated at that PAX in terms of like the layout. I can't say anything because there's an NWR joke there I'm not going to touch.
Well, the other thing I've been playing quite a bit on Switch is a game that's been out 2 or 3 years ago, but I just finally caught up to it thanks to a sale, and that's CrossCode. And I want to say Guillaume played this a while back.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. I cannot recall much of what he said about it, unfortunately, but I'm sorry if I repeat him. But I was attracted to CrossCode because it looks a hell of a lot like Chrono Trigger.
That is what he said, yes.
It does not play anything like Chrono Trigger, but the artwork is beautiful. It's just this really lush, sort of 90s-ass Japanese sprite work, Japanese style. I don't remember where the studio's from. I want to say Europe. But it's
Radical Fish, I think. So yeah, I think so.
That sounds right. Yeah, the game is really, really lovely. Like the music and the graphics are pretty outstanding for this kind of 16-bit, 16/32-bit kind of retro thing. And what it actually plays like is it's like a sci-fi Zelda kind of, like a top-down overhead Zelda game. But a lot more sci-fi themed, and there's a lot of shooting where you use the joystick to aim where you want to shoot, 360 degrees, and your shots bounce off walls, so you have to use that to solve puzzles, and the puzzles get wildly intricate. Like I think in a lot of cases these puzzles go beyond where you would take a Zelda puzzle, to the point where it's like maybe a layer too complicated or like a little bit too obtuse to figure out I've had to look up some videos, and I'm like, oh, okay. And sometimes the solution is just like, oh yeah, I was aiming, like I was trying to bounce my shot off the right way to hit that switch. I just wasn't standing in exactly the right place, or I was doing a thing and it wasn't working, and then I decided I must be doing this the wrong way. And then you go see the right way to do it. It's like, it's basically what I was already doing. The angle was like just half a degree off, and it didn't reflect, so it's fiddly. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. A lot of the puzzles are fiddly, but really clever. I mean, really ingenious dungeon design. And if you wish Zelda dungeons, like 2D Zelda dungeons, were much longer and much harder, you'll like CrossCode, because it really delivers on that. It feels like a it feels like they kind of deliberately wanted to step up the level of challenge for a game of that type. And the combat's okay. It's real time. You're like doing some melee and a lot of shooting, and usually the enemies ask you to like switch between those or use one or the other. And then you get elemental powers as you play through, and the skills and stuff I've not found to be super compelling. Like, I think as an action game, it's not amazing, but the puzzles are really good, and the story is pretty interesting. It's complicated. Lot of lore built into this world that they've developed. It's like you're playing in a it's got a bit of a dot hack thing where you're like playing in an MMO, but your character is a person who's in a coma, and you don't remember who you are. So you basically only exist while you're in the virtual world. And then you just sort of blink, you basically just go to sleep and blink out, and then you come back. And everybody else has lived a couple of days and they've come back from, they're back on the weekend and they're playing the game again. And you're just like, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, it's a very odd story. I don't really know where it's going, but it's a meaty game. And I've been enjoying CrossCode. I think it's going to take me a while to get through it. I do get stuck on the puzzles sometimes, and I get a little frustrated. But I think it's pretty cool. I'm very pleased that I caught up with it for sure.
So, funnily enough, the reason I could pull out the name of the developer so quickly, because it's not the kind of piece of information I would normally retain, is I was
impressed.
They were featured in the Triple I Initiative video, which I hate that fucking name so much, that came out today for their upcoming game Alabaster Dawn, which is currently for PC and Linux. Hasn't been announced for anything else. That it's going into early access in May. I haven't watched the video yet, but I caught the news that Alabaster Dawn got a early access date. If you should go look at that, because it looks like they took CrossCode and said, okay, let's do better this time from an art standpoint. I
mean, it already looks spectacular, I would say, for the style they're going for. I think they absolutely nailed it with CrossCode. So I'm really eager to see what they do next. I got to say, like, CrossCode is nothing if not ambitious. Like, whatever you think a game like this might contain, you'll be surprised when you play it. I think they put a lot into it.
This looks like they decided to keep going downfield, which I haven't watched that video yet because it literally dropped like 3 hours ago and I forgot to check it. But I caught the news that was in it, so
I need to check that out. I do like the pitch for that event, which is like it's all game trailers, no commercials, no ads, no hosts.
Yeah,
just like roll 'em. Just one after the other. Sometimes you get whiplash from showings like that, because it's like this one game does not. There's no transition really from one to the other, and sometimes the sequence of them can be kind of erratic.
There was the year that Sony basically did that for their E3 thing, but they had like a building that they hosted it in, which was super weird. And we made jokes about it because some of the transitions were like hyper violence, do cute game, and it's like you can't fucking do that.
Yeah,
you don't shift fifth gear to first. You blow up your transmission. Come on, let's figure this shit out. But yeah, it looks nice. It looks really nice. So
yeah,
I assume it'll get announced for other stuff later, but they probably don't have the capacity to do all the platforms at one time.
Yeah. I've been playing a PC game on Steam called RACCOIN, which you might have heard about. It is a kind of degenerate quasi-gambling simulator. Much like Balatro, it is clearly going for Balatro, and this game is not on. I don't think it's on any of the consoles yet.
It's just on PC right now.
It is absolutely coming to Switch. Let me just tell you right now. I don't know if they've announced anything, but when you play this, you're like, oh yeah, these people were thinking about the Switch when they made it. It feels like one of those, So that's why I bring it up now. I think some people might be interested in it. It's a coin pusher game, and it actually says on the title screen it is the coin pusher roguelike. I don't like when games do that. You like put the genre that you're going for on the title screen of your game. That's gauche. we don't do that. Keep that shit at home. I don't like that. But anyway, they did it, and I think it's especially unfortunate here because the game's really cool, and I don't know if coin pushers is that useful of a phrase. Like, does that mean anything to you guys?
Yeah, I know what those are, but even in this year, spend times in arcades. And coin pushers, for whatever reason, coin pushers have had like a weird resurgence in arcades.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I would assume because like 80% of the arcade machines are made by the same two companies at this point, and I assume they have coin pushers, and you can throw a brand, like a movie brand or like a fucking Marvel movies or whatever.
Yeah, like
on a
pinball. Yeah, you could dress it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's been happening. In fact, I went to the movie theater instead of recording last week and got there 30 minutes early because the movie time changed on me, and screwed around in their arcade with the Spider-Man coin pusher that, among other things, had obviously written by a non-native English speaker voiceover lines.
Oh yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I think I know the one. In fact, did he say "big ball game" a lot?
He did.
Big ball game. Yeah. Yeah. My Dave and Buster's has one of those, and it's hilarious.
I think there was one that was like great effect, and I'm like, what? I'm just cackling in the lobby of this theater at 9 p.m. but no one is there except for the ticket taker just staring at me, and it doesn't matter. I don't care.
I'm gonna say if people listening ever see the Spider-Man coin pusher game, you should go and watch it for a while.
It's so weird.
Especially I mean, it is hilarious, but also if you've never really, first off, Greg, do they have these in Europe, in the UK? Like, have you ever seen one of these?
I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, it's been too long to be in position to see one of these fancy ones. But the general concept naturally. But yeah, I guess it's just with time they've got more. Yeah, like is it more like higher end pinball tables, right? With video and audio and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they've added like spinners and things like that, and all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh gosh, and this game could actually, RACCOIN could use a little bit more of that razzle dazzle, I think, but I'll get to that in a sec. I just want to say, like, if people listening are not familiar with coin pushers, because I think they're not legal in every state, and maybe other countries they might be considered gambling or close enough to gambling that they're looked down upon. So some people may not be familiar. It's like a moving mechanical shelf with a bunch of coins stacked on it, like on multiple tiers of these like shelves that some are moving, maybe some are static, and they're sliding against each other, and they have this kind of hypnotic motion of in and out like the tide. So that's what attracted me to it when I was a kid. I think they didn't have these like around where I lived, but as we went on vacation, like if we drove down to the beach down toward Florida, there was definitely, you would cross a county line or a state line, and it's like suddenly these start appearing at the gas station or the arcade, like you said, or the souvenir store in Florida. So when I was a kid, I was totally mesmerized by the coin pusher machines, and there'd be like rows and rows. And of course, sometimes they're kind of loud, like slot machines. They put a bunch of special effects on them to attract you over. But like, just what I love about it is, a slot machine always feels like there's something behind the scenes that's probably manipulating, like there's no skill, but also there's no sense that it's really deterministic. It just feels like completely random what happens in a slot machine. So I've never had the slightest interest in slot machines. Like they don't attract me. I've never wanted to play them, never wanted to put money into a slot, But coin pushers, I've put a lot of money into coin pushers because they're physics. Like, you can see what's happening, and it feels like you can control what's going to happen. I think a little bit like not Plinko, but a Pachinko. It's a little bit like that, where it's like you have less control than in something like pinball or most video games, but you have more control than just dropping something. Well, yeah, it's weird. But so like in this case, there are little shooters that, like little troughs that will slide out coins from either side. And so you're choosing, in most coin pushers, you're choosing which side. Of course, you can do them at the same time too. And a lot of times the coins will come from both sides and then collide in the center. And that's one way you can put more coins in the middle if you want to push that part of the pile. So anyway, RACCOIN is the video game simulation of all this, which I've never seen. I'm sure they exist, but I've never seen a video game version of a coin pusher before.
It's kind of weird.
I don't know why.
Because they've been around
It
forever.
is weird. When I first saw it, it's like it wouldn't have even occurred to me really to make one. And when I saw a trailer for this, I thought, oh geez, they did it. Somebody finally went there and made a coin pusher and like put a bunch of video game scoring stuff around it. In this case, like a bunch of, bonus items and goofy animations, and there's like cute raccoon characters in the menus. But it's mostly just kind of watching the coins push each other around, like it's minimally interactive. I guess it's like almost an idle game, but not.
It's more than a cookie clicker, less than a pinball machine game.
Yeah, it's even less than Ball Pit, probably. Although I might like RACCOIN more than Ball Pit. Ball Pit, I played a lot of Ball Pit in a short period of time, but I'm not sure I ever loved it, It just always felt a little bit off to me, and I think RACCOIN is maybe better than that. But yeah, it's I don't know if it's amazing, but I've been playing it a lot the last few days. Like I just like watching it. I like watching RACCOIN the way I like watching a real physical coin pusher machine, and I like that I have that on me now. Like it's on my it lives on my laptop, so I can just kind of pull that up, and I can make the coins pile up and shove each other around, and eventually they kind of like teeter on the edge, on the precipice of the shelf before they fall in, and you get to keep them. They score and they start multiplying, and that's fun. Just the anticipation of that happening is really great. And of course, you always feel like if I could just put one more coin in, that's what would make that tall stack of them finally go over the edge. It's like Jenga. It's like playing Jenga, and that feeling of like, oh, there it goes. It's great. It's really great. So it's lovely that someone simulated all of this, and the game has physics. Like each coin has its own physics, and you can all see them all kind of like jittering and sliding around a little bit sometimes. It's quite wonderful. It just makes my 5-year-old inner self like really happy to see this in motion. Yeah.
I texted the girlfriend because I felt like this is a game she would have played. Sure enough, she has. She described it as it's very pretty, and the physics felt right for a coin pusher, which was very interesting.
Agreed.
Although she noted that it is RNG because it's a coin pusher, but there is a demo if you want to give it a shot or just want to see what the hell a coin pusher is.
Yeah, well, a Steam demo. Yeah.
I did, because we talk about this kind of stuff. I did go look up the quote from the Spider-Man art, the coin pusher. The exact quote, because I sent it to her at the time, was "Bonus spin. It's great day for you."
Excellent.
And it's so loud.
Yes, of course they crank it up in the arcade.
It's so stupid.
Anyway, I've probably said too much about RACCOIN already.
No, you're good.
It's not a very deep game, but I have enjoyed it quite a bit.
It does feel like the kind of thing that will make its way to consoles, particularly Switch, at some point. Like there will be a Nintendo indie event where they're like, "Here's RACCOIN."
Is this the time to say a few words about Mario Kart World and Kart Bay?
Sure.
Okay. A lot of people who listen to this show are my friends on Nintendo Online. We traded friend codes or whatever we did to make that happen years ago. And so I feel like I need to put out a disclaimer, just to be honest, just to come clean with the world, that if you see Johnny NWR playing Mario Kart World Online and kicking ass, it's not me. It is very unlikely to be myself, because my wife only plays Mario Kart World.
Oh no.
It is the only game, well, she has like a phone game she likes, but it's really the only video game that she's like spending time with, and she plays it most days. A lot.
She's turning into the Terminator at this game, is what you're telling us?
She's really good. We play 2-player online a lot, which is great. That's one of the best features, by the way. It's like if your online game can do it, you should have that. It's fantastic to play against the field, but we're together locally. Excellent. But yeah, we play online. Sometimes I join her. Mostly I watch her in awe of her viciousness, of her strategy, of her, her persistence, and also she's very entertaining because she screams a lot when she gets hit and when she gets knocked out of the sky. So it's very fun just to listen to all that. But yeah, she specializes in Knockout Tour. She's into that Spiny Cup. And that's her favorite, but of course you don't get to choose. It just cycles through them. She's played all of them a lot, and her online ranking is about 8,000, which I think is pretty good.
Yes,
I can tell you, of course, she's getting matched up with people who are relatively close to her in a lot of cases, so I don't know what the range is, but I don't see many other players with higher ranks than her when they get matched with her. And she wins first in a field of 24 in Mario Kart World. 24 people online of the most nasty motherfuckers who play that game.
God.
And she wins first like multiple times a week. And she's usually in the top, the top 4 or top 8. And of course that game has so much chaos that sometimes she's doesn't even make it through the first segment of the knockout. Like that's totally possible. You can get totally screwed, but she's pretty consistent. So yeah, I have not. I mean, I've played plenty of Mario Kart World. I probably played 40 hours of it if I had to guess. She's probably put like 200 or 300. I mean, it's at least, and she rules at it. So that's been delightful. I don't know that Mario Kart World is my favorite in the series, but I have loved watching her get so into it. And she's taught me a lot about the meta of it, like the way, the way people choose their routes through the tracks, and the way people hold their items, and the different behaviors and stuff. So it's been cool to kind of learn the hardcore side of Mario Kart and to see her really go off on it. I keep trying to get her to play other games. I mean, she's good at games. She could play Mario and Zelda and stuff like that, but she just wants more Mario Kart World. So there's a whole lot of it in my house. Sometimes I have to fight her for the Switch too, so I can like play ChainStaff to get ready for the show, for example. So yeah, it's that game I know is not beloved. I heard in your top 5 there are a lot of mixed feelings about Mario Kart World. Your mileage may vary with this one, of course, but there is a subset of people for whom it is one of the greatest games of all time. So I felt like I needed to share that, my secondhand testimony for this game.
Yeah, I've been meaning to have a look at they added the bob-omb blast to the battle mode, which is not something I've done a lot of either. I've got to say, just even the previous, the ones that were there, the coins and the balloons, the usual sort of methods. Have you played a lot of battle mode, Johnny, at all?
I have not touched it at all. She has zero interest in battle mode, so
right.
I really have not touched it.
No, that's the thing. It's something that felt like it used to be a lot bigger deal in Mario Kart, you know what I mean? But I mean, some of it obviously is like when they did Mario Kart 8 and it basically didn't have it. That was kind of a watershed moment for there is no actual battle mode in this game of any, kind of a reasonable level. So that kind of showed you where the priorities were there. Of course, it was a big part then of Deluxe for Switch. They when they brought it to Switch, they brought it along some decent battle mode options at that point. But obviously, you've got when you can race online and how many players you can race against, it becomes sort of battle-esque, really, over time, and especially, like, is it Knockout Tour now with the number of people that are in that and all that? I guess it's like you can kind of get some of the enjoyment of battle mode, but in a race at the same time, so maybe that kind of lessens it. But like I said, I would like to at least give that a go, because I think so. Certainly, like if I go back to like Double Dash, I think that was probably my favourite battle mode was the bob-omb one.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, I spent a little time with the battle mode, and I don't. It felt very like it's there. That's basically what it felt like. It's like, okay, we got the message on Mario Kart 8. We didn't forget the message after Deluxe. It's here. Check the checkbox. Move on. But I don't know. I only play in knockout mode. Like that's the only mode I play it in when I go online, because it feels so significantly different from what we've had.
Yeah, I think Knockout Tour's one of the best things to ever happen to Mario Kart. For I have mixed feelings about the rest of the game. I think the open world part of it is a little disappointing, but I think Knockout Tour is fantastic, and it probably wouldn't exist without that open world.
No.
So for me, it justifies the whole experiment, really.
Honestly, it felt like they made Knockout Tour, and then they're like, well, we should do something with this world we made. We'll just let you explore it.
Indeed. Even the Grand Prix feels like an afterthought compared to Knockout
To a certain degree, yeah. We built these tracks, and we should use them, I guess.
Yeah. I also want to say, just in defense, some people, I've read some, people whose opinions I respect, talk about playing this game online and about how just like the obviously the silliness of all the items, and the wackiness that happens when you have real people playing the game online and not just AI who are, often a little more conservative maybe. We've felt that ever since Mario Kart first went online. When you play online, it's a different game. The people on there do not play like the AI, and it's way more vicious.
No, even something as basic as like an F-Zero game, like AI is always is conservative, right? It's like like you get to the finish line of the on the last lap of an F-Zero race, where it's one of the games where your boost is your life. You boost to the line. Any human being is always going to do that, right? The AI in F-Zero games does not. So you then apply that to the many, 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 many more types of interactions that you can have in Mario Kart in terms of how you use your items and stuff. You get the idea, don't you?
Exactly. Well, especially in World where there's so many possibilities with the shortcuts and writing on the walls and all the different things you can do, and watching my wife play, I've learned a lot about the strategies of avoiding the fray, how to manage the chaos, how to bank up your items so that when you go through a certain section that it's going to throttle everybody together, or in Knockout Tour, when you get toward the checkpoint where it's a cutoff, as you approach that, you don't want to be near the center of the track, right? You might want to hold on to a shell to drag behind you or something like that, rather than use it on the person in front of you. So there's a lot of like sort of, some, I don't know if that's subtle, but like things that might not be super obvious when you first start playing. And it's been cool to see. But I think some people feel like having 24 people is like a bridge too far, for online. And it just I've heard that people say the online mode is basically unplayable because there's too much stuff going on. But I think as you play it more, and you have to be persistent, maybe suffer through it a bit until you kind of learn how not to get caught up in all that. But I think you can avoid that chaos or shield against it and buffer against it in a lot of the game gives you a lot of tools to do that, and Kart and World, more than ever, gives you a lot of ways you can go around that stuff or get through it. So I think if you stick with it, it's a skill issue, and like dealing with that many players is different, and it's more challenging. But I like that they've kind of raised the ceiling in this game, and I wouldn't have expected my wife to be the person to go tap on that skill ceiling, but she's doing it, so it's been cool.
Cool. So now if you see Johnny's name pop up, just run, just disconnect, do whatever it takes.
Yeah, she drives the swoop, the little bat in the, I think it's the cart that looks like a missile with the black with an orange tip on it. Yeah, that's her rig. She'll mess you up.
just disconnect from the internet. It was not.
Go play battle mode. You won't find her there.
That's right. It's safe. It's safe here.
That's
in
the
battle
safe
mode. Awesome. John, you said you saw the newest Mario movie.
Yeah, did you guys see it?
I have not seen it.
I still haven't seen the first one, so
yeah, I will see it at some point. But my MO for seeing movies is basically after nobody else wants to see them. I like the empty theater.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we saw this on opening weekend. We both liked the first movie quite a bit. We saw it separately and then talked about it a little bit, and it's like, oh yeah, we both really had a surprisingly great time. I don't think either of us had, my wife and I mean, didn't have like super high expectations for the first Mario movie, but I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's it's very enjoyable, very entertaining movie. I know some people kind of like to hate on it and clown on it for not having a story or whatever, but I think it has more story than the games do. So like that's my frame of reference.
Yeah, but it's a movie. That's the difference.
Right. Like it doesn't have a lot of story.
That's
I
a low ass
that.
bar, Johnny.
It's got a very basic story, But it's all about the whiz bang of seeing seeing the characters brought to life in a more expressive, detailed way than the games can accomplish. And obviously, you're giving up the interactivity of it being a video game, and that's the part where I thought, like, I don't know that I care about what Mario does if I'm not holding the controller and telling him to do it. Like that's my relationship with Mario from a very young age. It's like if I'm not controlling Mario, I don't know that I'm that interested in his capers. And I think they brought me in enough with both of these movies to enjoy the story and be along for the ride. But the performances are a huge part of the fun of it, because I think the voice acting is pretty stellar, honestly, overall. Like Mario is, Chris Pratt's probably the weakest link here, but that's okay because he's not really even the main character of the second movie. It's a very large ensemble. I think maybe this is Miyamoto just being self-aware, but I think there's been a lot of recognition between these two movies that Mario is not really that interesting of a character on his own, but Mario is like a so-called normal guy who gets dropped into a crazy world, and the crazy world's full of wild characters, and the stories and the movies wisely focus primarily on the other characters, and the Galaxy movie really leans into that even more. So I was glad to see that, and I just think Jack Black and Anya Taylor-Joy and Donald Glover of all people playing Yoshi.
That is so weird.
I wish he had more lines. Maybe it's smart to not have Yoshi say Yoshi too many times, but
that seems like it should be a job for Frank Welker, who is still with us. Who gave us Soundwave and Megatron, but
I didn't realize he was still alive.
I'm pretty sure he is. Certainly, I've seen things in the not too distant past of him appearing at like conventions and stuff. But obviously, as well as doing like those sorts of voices on cartoons, where he did actually get to give a performance of a person that was doing actual lines, he would also do a lot of like noises, like for pets in kind of cartoons, or like Slimer in the real Ghostbusters, for instance.
That's Frank Welker. Cool.
But yeah. So like Yoshi seems like a job for that kind of voice actor, as opposed to
this feels a little bit like when I found out that Vin Diesel was Groot in the Guardian of the Galaxy movies. It's like, but why? Why?
He's also the Iron Giant, and that's why.
Yeah, well, I get it from that perspective. It's like you really didn't need him for this role.
No, but it's he puts his name on the poster, and that's something.
that's what it comes down to. That's what I mean. It's like, well, this is putting it on the poster kind of stuff. But yeah.
Sorry to derail, but my favorite Frank Wesker performance for sure is Venger in the Dungeons and Dragons animated series.
Oh God!
And that is a voice
I think that is Peter Cullen, isn't it? That's Optimus Prime.
No kidding? I may very well have mixed them up. Sorry, but
Frank Welker does Uni in Dungeons and Dragons. Again, that's another one of his like
because
Slimer
it was probably recorded at the same studio as all the other stuff they did. So,
he and Peter
actors.
Cullen overlap a lot. And again, Peter Cullen did some of those. He's got that beautiful, rich voice. Great for movie trailers and Optimus Prime and all that, but he also did stuff like where he's just like doing the dog noises or whatever like that. So
well, and the Venger voice is this. I mean, it actually sounds painful to when you. It must have hurt his throat to do it. It's so raspy.
I mean that's also true with Welker and Megatron, isn't it? Because he doesn't have a naturally very deep voice. Frank Welker, that's why he does all these high pitched like Slimer and all that. But then like Megatron's so like raspy and like kind of
voice very
he's
hard.
Really sort of trying to give the idea that this guy's been around forever and is just very bitter. But like the thing is, what they did is obviously in the film, Galvatron was Leonard Nimoy, and then when they did cartoons after that, they can't afford Nimoy, obviously, so it's like, well, it's back to Frank Welker. And like the idea, I guess, is like he's young Megatron because he's been reborn, so he just sounds like so completely different from Leonard Nimoy, and I did not get that as a kid whatsoever. I was
nice.
Like, why does he sound like this? That's not Galvatron. I just didn't understand it in the slightest.
Well, I apologize for the distraction and for
you're fine. You're fine.
Mispronouncing his name and miscasting him. But anyway, I do love the voices in the Mario movies, and obviously they leaked out the day before it came out that Fox McCloud is in this movie, and I'm not going to spoil all what happens. This movie's not that spoilable anyway, but I'm not going to try. But I was surprised at how much Fox McCloud is in the movie. I think, and this makes sense if you think about it, but I think he is the DK of this movie. I would have thought Yoshi would be, but Yoshi's just kind of along for the ride the whole way. And Fox is introduced like halfway through, and he takes on a prominent role, and I was kind of surprised by that. I thought he was, I think Glenn Powell plays him well, and he looks awesome. They just did a great job with the artwork and the animation. And there's a moment, like probably 90 seconds or 2 minutes, when you first meet Vox, and he gives his quick background and talks about how he got there, and the movie switches into a different animation style, and it's probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. And it's weird that it doesn't look like the rest of the movie, but it's incredibly beautiful and well done. It's like done in, I think they're going for like an 80s anime, Gundam sort of look to it. And it's also definitely reminiscent of the Star Fox instruction manual and some of the artwork that they did back in the 90s when the franchise was first kicking off. But yeah, it's gorgeous and thrilling, and just like, wow, how did we get here? How am I sitting in a movie theater watching Star Fox stuff in an anime style? I mean, why? Also, why? And I guess the why is they're going to make a new Star Fox game, which is shocking, I suppose, except that we know Miyamoto it's like his beloved franchise. So, I guess he's not going to give up on it. I sure hope that game is good. I can't wait to find out.
I'm going to keep my powder dry on that one. This is one of those. Like, I've seen enough of people going like, "Oh yeah, here's all the things," and then being like, "Absolutely not, incorrect." That we'll see. But also, I'm going to go back to what they last said about Star Fox. Like, why haven't you made another one? We don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that is something that Miyamoto personally said, right?
Yeah, but they're not making a Star Fox game unless he signs off on it. So
I would imagine he would be the impetus for it, given the commercial fortunes of it recently. I suppose the problem I always have with Star, and I've got enormous affection for Star Fox. The first game made a huge impression on me. It was one of the first polygonal games I ever really interacted with, apart from glimpsing things like virtual racing in the arcade or whatever. And I just like the design of it and the sort of spectacle of it and all that kind of thing. But along with that, just because the characters were there, I had the Japanese box, with the nice little sort of maquette things, that they photographed to make the box art and all that. It's like, I like the characters as a kid or whatever. But, to me, the real sort of raison d'etre of Star Fox is, arcadey, flashy, pushing the boundaries of tech stuff, and of it, rather than the characters. And so obviously that went out of style, especially for Nintendo, the way they kind of sidestepped the tech arms race back in the Wii generation. So it's just like, obviously Miyamoto seems to have affection for the characters specifically. And so I guess, the question is there something you can do with those that can still work and make sense? Because it's tough to make games, that are based around, that will be faithful to the arcade style, even though obviously, it was very much a home game, a home franchise, that will be able to support like a mainstream kind of release these days, right? It's just like even something like Star Fox Zero, which is to a fair degree reheated 64 in a number of ways. It tries to kind of pad the running time a bit, right, by having the beefing up the all range mode stuff that was in 64. And that, I would say, is one. A lot of people just don't get on with the controls and all that kind of stuff, and that's one thing. I got on with the controls fine, but I've certainly left feeling like this improves all range mode, but I still want the main course of Star Fox to be the main course. I want it to be the on rails, sort of shooting gallery, shoot 'em up style gameplay, and it just kind of feels like it's really tough to build a mainstream release around that. And I have no idea how they're going to try and surmount that challenge as a a commercial and creative problem to be solved simultaneously. But it certainly would be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you've identified the core problem with this franchise since going back really to N64 days, I would say, which is that the games are short. And I thought about that in the movie theater. I'm watching this thinking they are turning a new generation of kids into Star Fox fans without even having kids who will have never played a Star Fox game because there hasn't been one in their lifetime.
Right.
Or not even close.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
Zero was 10 years ago, right? And I mean, that was basically a fart in the wind in terms of...
Almost exactly. It was April, I believe.
It was completely non-existent on a system that itself was never big and was in its death throes. So it was like that. You've got to go back to 64 3D for something that was even vaguely successful.
And again, that falls into the trap we've talked about of the show of like, well, we'll just keep remaking Star Fox 64 until it hits again. And it's like, bro, I bought Star Fox 64 because it came with the Rumble Pack. I was like that game had, you can't just look at that game's sales and go, well, that was the peak. Well, there were other factors involved in that game's sales.
I got it from Japan, I must be one of the few people who actually didn't have the Rumble Pack with
oh my god
64.
That's sad. It was thrilling.
I got the Rumble Pack eventually. It was just separately and a bit later.
I rented it from an N64 and Star Fox 64 because I didn't have one yet. And even Blockbuster gave you the Rumble Pack when you rented Star Fox 64. Good. They knew.
It's important to the experience.
It is.
Distinctly, it was probably my first real experience with force feedback, and I remember deliberately flying the R-Wing into the ground and into the towers over and over just so I could feel it. And I just thought, wow, it's like the game is physically reacting to me, which is not actually what's happening. Not really, but it's like the immersion was pretty striking at the time. And it's just the kind of thing we totally take for granted now. But if you'd never felt that before, it felt pretty magical, Anyway, I just think with a new Star Fox, with all these new people coming to it for the first time, if that game is 2 hours long, it's going to be a bloodbath. Like they've got, if you're introducing Star Fox to such a large mainstream audience like this, and then releasing a new game probably right around the time this movie comes out for home video, on all the streaming and digital platforms and Blu-ray and all that. That's the rumor is that's when this game might come out, and I just think it's a great business-wise. Yeah, it makes
what are
a
you
lot
going to
of
put
sense.
in that game to make it
It's
worth
gonna do well
$70?
for Yeah, but
Yeah.
if this is another Star Fox 64 situation, y'all are screwed. People are going to be mad. So they must have come up with some way of lengthening that experience. And I don't, I mean, the only things I can think of are it's either a huge world that you're flying around in, which seems very unlikely, or maybe it's some kind of clever roguelike or run-based thing.
That's what I was leaning towards.
That's the heritage of the series. They did that in previous games, but I think you would need to escalate that concept in a major way to really make this game fit the sort of mainstream success that they are setting it up for.
Star Fox Business Simulator. You don't fly, you run the mercenary corporation. Done. I made you a better game, Nintendo. You're welcome.
They did make a thing of billing General Pepper in
That's right.
Star Fox 64, didn't they? I had it in Japanese, so I think if you got a really high score, General Pepper was very
he was like, woo-wee!
Perturbed by it. I think you got the nani, into the Japanese line. Can't believe how much he's getting charged.
Yeah, because the normal one was it's expensive, but it's worth it. But if you got some insane score, he'd be like, wah!
Yep, you could just focus on the billing aspect and say, well, this is true to the spirit of the series.
Mercenary Invoice Simulator. Done. I did it. I made it a Switch game by giving it a fucking generic title. We're done.
It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with it, because it's hard. Again, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but if you haven't seen this movie yet, you are not prepared for how cool Star Fox is and how excited kids are going to be to play their very first Star Fox game. It's going to be a big deal. I was not expecting this at all, and I just came out of the theater thinking they're actually going to try to make Star Fox a thing like Donkey Kong is. Like he has been elevated to the level of Donkey Kong. Okay,
God.
So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
The funny thing is, Donkey Kong's depiction in the first movie is so inferior to the art style they came up with for the Switch 2 content that he's in now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that design is so vastly superior to the one the movie has that it's almost embarrassing, and the team who made it should feel embarrassed.
Well, he doesn't show up in the second movie, so maybe they agree with you.
I saw the casting didn't have him on there. Like, it's the Donkey Kong design now is so good. It's so fucking good. Holy shit. God. I mean, you're right. Like, my thought was it had to be like a roguelike or something. But could you I'm about to say this phrase. I detest that this phrase is about to exit my mouth. But could you create runs that are at least semi-random in a way that still gives you the feeling of getting better at Star Fox? And I don't think you can, because I think a lot of what you're doing in Star Fox to get better, to do the score runs, is memorizing the stages, understanding where the secrets are, preparing yourself to be in place to intercept the right flows of enemies.
So yes,
like
you could imagine them introducing maybe different gameplay mechanics that would drive you to play it in a different way. Like if there were more enduring enemies that you had to learn their tactics, and there was more of a dogfighting kind of aspect to it. They've done some of that, like in I think of the Venom all range stage on 64, where you're fighting Starwolf.
Yeah.
There that actually felt like, oh, okay, these are not like chump enemies. Like you actually have to kind of learn. They're not that hard to trick once you learn a few maneuvers. But they put something into it, so I could see them doing more along those lines. But I don't know. I mean,
even then,
I'm a Star Fox fan. I consider myself a Star Fox fan, and I didn't even play Zero. And I had a Wii U. I could have bought Zero, and I did not. And I still haven't played Zero. I have the base. What's that thing? The base assault thing they did for it. I got that as kind of.
With Uncle Grippy.
I got a curiosity. I picked that up for like $10. But I've I've never played it beyond, I think, an E3 demo or something. So I'd love if they made that a little, if there was a way they could make that work on Switch. I don't know if that's really practical with the way it controls. So maybe that game is just going to be banished to history. But yeah, anyway, it just feels like we're on the brink of a huge resurgence. I mean, if you follow John Raridan on social media, or if you've seen any of the recent YouTube videos on NWR TV, you might get a sense of just how excited he is. But I think he has very good reason to be. They're going to do something really major with the franchise, and I don't know what it's going to be. But
well, this is the thing.
Cool.
I mean, I don't like to look at it necessarily in such cynical, perhaps someone could say, or certainly at least dispassionate terms. But I don't imagine this is a terribly long film, right? It's
sure.
100 minutes maybe.
Yeah. 105, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So I mean, those minutes are valuable real estate, shall we say, for advertising. Let's just say it, the games and the properties, and the queuing up more films, more spin-off series, whatever they've got in mind. All this stuff. So you don't dedicate it to this without it having the sort of on ramps to more revenue generation. That's what this is. You know what I mean?
And that's
admittedly, if you were being truly ruthlessly commercial about it, I don't think you would probably be using Star Fox, because it doesn't have the pedigree certainly of Donkey Kong. I mean, you think of what the DKC games did. Even DK64 was one of the biggest kind of 64 games back in its day. Star Fox doesn't quite have that same pedigree commercially, or the same name ID, nowhere near.
Right.
So there's an element of it that must be coming just from Miyamoto's attachment and belief and desire to have this thing on screen.
I don't think Star Fox is a tenth of the brand of Donkey Kong, right? So it really is weird to see it pushed to the front of the stage like this.
But at the same time, you don't do that and just have it go nowhere, because again, that's what these films are, right? Is it's all an on ramp to something, to sell you a toy, to sell you a video game, to set up another movie, whatever it is. It's all about, and that leading somewhere, and that's presumably why I've not read that many of the reviews, but there's a lot of that sort of sentiment, even from people who are warmer on it than some, because there's plenty that are negative, that it's just kind of, over stuff with stuff, just to kind of, we've got to get it in there because we've got plans for what to do next with it.
I mean, so, this is about as commercial as a movie can get. And that's not to say that it isn't artistic.
Literally.
Which I think it absolutely is. I think it's a beautiful work of art, and it's also obscenely commercial and commercialized, and it is a commercial for other things. And, I think that's obvious when you go to it, but some people show up at it, and especially film critics who go because it's their job, and they show up at it and they're like, what's the point of all this? And, I understand that reaction, but the movie is most definitely not for you. If you never played a Mario game, you could enjoy this movie and you might not. And it could go either way. I wouldn't want to predict it, but I don't think the movie is made for you.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from the first movie was basically this is fine. It is above what my fears for that movie were.
Yeah,
going in, I'm like,
above.
this could be a disaster. But yeah, my takeaway was, what was the raison d'etre for any of that? It existed. It was very bright and it did things, but ultimately, did anyone feel fulfilled in the process of making this thing beyond
but that's
economic?
That's not the objective, James, and that's not really that's not being fair or meeting the movie on its own terms. This is a Nintendo movie. Look at the Nintendo ethos. We are here to make people smile. We are here to make people happy and have fun, and that is all the movie is trying to do.
But you missed who I was actually speaking of there. I was speaking of the people who made it. Did they feel fulfilled coming out of this process?
I see.
Yeah, or did they just feel okay, we have completed the commercial transaction that we were hired to produce. Here is the film that is the result of that thing.
The animators. I mean, I think if you're an artist, if you're an animator, and you get a chance to work on a Mario project.
Yeah,
if you're
I
a
think that
Mario
can be
fan, that's probably awesome. So that might be
Yeah,
extremely fulfilling, regardless of, you know, of what
Did-
you're doing is to go
it
sell more
felt
video games in cereal boxes.
Yeah, it just felt extremely like I don't know. Vapid's not the word I want, because you're right. I mean, it is what it is. Just like it's not the right word either. It felt extremely like I can see the contracts being signed. The movie.
Yeah.
And that's a part of my brain, because I've been doing this show now for, I don't know, 17 years, 15 years, that will never turn off. It's just there. It's going to live there forever.
In a very real way, this is a product placement movie. And I fully understand that. I just, obviously, I don't
My
mind.
brain can't turn that off.
I like the product.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I think the Greg, to your point, like the reason why I don't put too much stock in proliferation of the rumor of there's going to be, like, it would have been very easy for someone to take their shot in the dark at a rumor and say, well, Star Fox is in the movie, that must mean there's a game coming, which is kind of how I read it, because a lot of the people
indeed, that sort of thing. It just but it feels like there's got to be something. I mean, it could be like I said, a spin-off.
It could be
TV show in the
it
vein
that
Johnny spoke about. That
it could be
bespoke
new Lego
aesthetic.
sets. Yeah,
that it's got.
Like, I mean, you remember frequent letter writer GX, which is what his handle is on the NWR Discord right now, because I called him that, notes that the only thing out of the Sonic movies he really likes is the Shadow the Hedgehog spinoff, because it just plays all the characters as stupid. And it's like, yeah, it's great. That's
also, isn't it? You called GX, if I remember correctly, you called him frequent listener when you meant to say frequent letter writer. That's the joke.
I can't prove that he actually listens, though, so I guess that's fair. It's entirely possible he just emails from the article page and has nothing to do with it.
That's terrifying. By the way, given the pattern here with Donkey Kong being in the first movie, Bonanza follows fairly soon after. Now Fox McCloud is in this movie, and the R-Wing very much in this movie, and then supposedly a new Star Fox game coming out this year. I think we can all look forward to most likely a cool new Wario game in about 3 years. So put that on your predictions calendar.
So if Waluigi shows up, riot. If Waluigi is in the next movie, you have my permission to riot.
I mean, it feels like that's actually going to happen at this point. And by the way, I don't even think there's any evidence of I don't think Wario even shows up in a bonus scene or anything. I'm not spoiling anything there either. I'm just saying it feels like that's the obvious next place for the franchise to go. Yeah. And especially seeing how they completely moved on from DK. If we assume they're also going to move on from Rosalina and Fox, in the next movie.
Yeah.
Okay, where are you taking Mario? Where do you spin the Mario franchise wheel? What do you have left? And Wario and Daisy and Waluigi all seem like kind of the obvious next set of characters you bring in here, because Mario himself is boring and Luigi is funny only in short doses.
Yeah, I think that was when I say, like, my takeaway from that first movie was they just tried to jam too much stuff in there. They had, like, the weird Donkey Kong American Gladiators bullshit. They had an unnecessarily long sequence of Mario karting. There was basic plot. It was like you could have just picked some of this stuff and then saved it for other films. But it was a bit like the writers had just been doing pixie sticks like lines of cocaine at a strip club. Like, they were just on it, just going as hard as they can. All right, we need more scenes.
Buckle up, buddy, because it's the second movie is exactly that, and they don't even have to. They don't even have to set up. Where did Mario come from? What was his life like before he entered the mud? Like, there's none of that. It's just straight in, baby, and it is fast. It's dense and fast and chaotic. And
God,
yeah, no, it's very much the same frenetic kind of like, whoa, what?
Like, there is a value to all the screenwriters listening to the show, of which I doubt there are many. There is a value to taking a fucking breath in your movie.
Actually, I can think of at least one screenwriter who might be listening. He used to, at least.
Like, just take a breath. give the audience a minute to go like, oh fuck, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That movie jumps between things at such a pace where it's just like, why did you need to jam all of this in?
Yeah.
Why did it all need to be here?
They're breathless.
Like when the carts get pulled out, it's like that you could have saved that for a whole other movie. You could have just sat on that for the inevitable sequel. Calm down, please.
I guess the problem, especially with the first one, you kind of feel like you don't know if it's going to be a hit. So it's like they probably feel like you gotta shoot your shot. You know what I mean? And Mario Kart commercially is the biggest weapon they've got, right? So it's like it's got to go in. I assume that was some sort of conversation at some point, right? It's just like we have to give this. Obviously, they did pace things out, right? Like they teased Yoshi in the first one, but they didn't bring him in until the second one. So it's not like they were full shotgunning everything at once, but they probably would err on the side of putting too much in the first one, just to kind of get it up and running and have it be a hit. And of course, it was a huge hit, right? And now the second one seems to be tracking pretty similarly, but I would guess that this time it's probably far more might be a bit much, but even more ruthlessly kind of gonna merchandise it and make more non-direct revenue from the movie, you know what I mean? Like the spin-off revenues will be even better because this time they've got the base to work with. Like, hey, we did it worked. We know kind of where we're trying to hit, like with all the different stuff, and they just even if the box office is a little bit down, they'll probably just make it up in all the other ways that this time they were laser focused and prepared for to capitalize on it.
Why did we not get a Happy Meal toy set for this movie? Who failed? Who was at
Did
the
they
Switch?
not? I kind of felt like I might have seen something about that, but then maybe it was only in a certain part of the world or something. I don't
Maybe.
know.
Like I feel like if we didn't, somebody is absolutely asleep at the Switch. Like what happened? Man, I assumed at the time the Mario Kart stuff was just like we can sell every character and their cart as a toy, but then that didn't happen, and I was confused. They can make a Lego kit for every. Are we gonna get? All right, Johnny. Are we gonna get a Lego Mario movie?
Ooh,
that's because they've done it before.
Yeah, I mean that seems kind of obvious now that you say it out loud. I never considered it, but yeah.
Like it's that and the Lego Mario game are the two like infinite Ouroboros of marketing that we haven't had yet.
You can keep
but
the game.
They both,
I don't need that.
They both feel dark and inevitable.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to take it one step further, you could have the Lego Mario movie attraction at Universal Studios and just take it like down the lane of just marketing.
The problem is Legoland gets that one, so they get they get their little allocation of Mario over there at Legoland.
It's gonna be like if you want to see the Avengers, you have to go to Universal Studios, but if you want to see whatever they call them in the Disney campus, because they can't call it that because of some 30-year-old contract. Yeah, that's what we're gonna end up with. We're gonna end up with some weird, fucked up, splintered Mario stuff. Oh, good lord! All right, we need a break.
Yeah,
I need a break. I need a drink, non-alcoholic, because it's 10:30. So we're gonna keep that straight for right now. But when we come back, we're gonna do maybe a little bit more listener mail, and then I've got a game I want these people to play. So stay tuned. We are back, and we're going to continue on new business. Greg, what have you been up to?
Well, I suppose for a bit of topical continuity, I will mention still I've got the very last few sort of challenges to go on the Toad Brigade challenge stuff of the Meetup in Bellabel Park. Expansion to Super Mario Brothers Wonder. So yeah, just really down to the nub now. It's almost all challenges that are harder versions of stuff you've already done. So, like basically they've got a 5 flame rating system for how difficult the challenges are. And yeah, I'm just down to the 5 flames. So the genuine 5 alarm ones, not your Flanders 2.5 top stuff. It's so the like I said, quite a few of them are like no damage runs of previous things you've done, but there's some value in that, because not only is it obviously different sometimes where you can just kind of like trade a hit almost for getting some damage in at a crucial moment, like for instance fighting bosses, and obviously not being able to do that changes how you kind of approach them. But also like in those original, before you get to the no damage run, like it would start you with a power up, and the power up may make fighting the boss in question very, very different, quite a bit easier perhaps. So I feel like it still has some value, but that's I'm down to the last few now. But I've been pleased with how much they kind of put some of these things to the test, some kind of really fiendish, one of the 5 alarm challenges, a pretty fiendish use of like this kind of a badge that gives you like a bigger spring jump, like in midair, instead of like just the usual little twirl that you do. And it sort of it forces that badge on you, and then says, hey, interact in this really tight little space of one of those like boats, sort of circular bone dragons, where you've got to like avoid touching any coins or you fail instantly. And it's like the thing that's really useful in a situation like that is the normal twirl that you can't just do at will anymore.
That's
so it's
sick.
Like it's that I thought was a really quite enjoyably fiendish kind of mechanical twist using the badges. And there was one, the invincibility. I spoke about this before. The one of the sort of categories is like these invincibility speedruns where you've got to chain together invincibility power ups all the way to the end, otherwise you fail instantly. And usually, like with all of these, I'm like, some it forces badges on you, right? That's the whole challenge. Others, it gives you the opportunity, just like, hey, just pick one from quite a broad range if you think it might help you. Generally, I've been like, look, I just want to do these straight up. Like, I just want to see, how you do it without any kind of help from any badges. There's one invincibility one that's like, I just could not quite make it to like this one stretch from, the one invincibility star to the next to keep the chain going. Every time I would just get so close and not quite get there. And I'm like, there's a badge that could definitely make up what is a minuscule difference. It's the grapple vine thing. Like, so I could just kind of latch onto a ledge at speed rather than have to like slow down and jump over it. And that would make the crucial difference. So that, screw it, I'm just doing that. And it works. So, yeah, it kind of broke me, but, yeah, I cleared it. So, whatever.
Greg, that's what they're for.
Yeah, and it very much is what they're for. But I was so damn close to doing it without it. It's like you just
Nice.
dig in, no good reason whatsoever. Just pure obstinate sort of attitude. But I was, sort of, to put a positive spin on it, cured of that. And I just did it the other way. Now,
this is progress.
Sure. So, yeah, close to kind of finishing all those off. But something I finished a little while back that had been cooking, in the background for a while that we've already spoken about before is Resident Evil 9 on Switch 2. So, yeah, basically it was slow going early on because I kind of, as I've already mentioned a fair bit, I was kind of like, when I'm playing the Grace sections and I'm doing as they, sort of recommend in terms of playing those in first person. And of course they are, just by their very nature, much less action focused than the Leon segment. It's like, okay, for those, I want to get the chance to be able to like, kind of lock in, do at least most of those segments on the TV and, really kind of get the atmosphere and all, because that's a lot of the point of it, right? Thing is, a lot of the sort of first so much of the game is heavily leveraged on Grace's stuff, right? So, like, Leon, he kind of comes in and it's surprising how brief it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, it's like I finally get to a Leon part at some point and then I was like, oh, well, I might save the Leon stuff for portable play, right? This is more kind of stuff I'm comfortable with doing in portable play. Oh, but I'll just, I'll play a little bit of it while I'm here. on the television just to kind of get the lay of the land. And then you kind of realise, like, this is going to be over. it's those first few are really quite like interludes, where it almost feels like, I guess they didn't want to like go too long without having Leon at all, but equally it does feel a little bit token, or a little bit kind of like
everyone should be asking where's Leon kind of stuff.
And maybe it's a bit unkind, because I got on reasonably well with them, the Leon segments, but you could maybe a little bit fillery. It kind of feels like the Grey stuff, which is where you've got very limited kind of, much more like classic Resident Evil, right? Were before RE4, where you've got, limited space for items in your inventory, where you've got very limited ammunition. You've got this weird, like, crafting system where like, somehow infected zombie blood can make bullets, but like, it's like, so you can like forage for things and make things, but it's still trying to be a little bit tight, right? These things are precious, right? So you've got all that kind of, and then Leon on the other hand is much more RE4, like even just like the menu, right? Like whereas Grace's menu is much more like classic Resident Evil, Leon's menu is like Resident Evil 4, where you've got the whole like play, Tetris to rearrange your case thing. To fit the, kind of items into your case all at once. So, like, it's drawing from different eras. It's the anniversary of the whole series this year, so I'm sure that's, like, baked in there. They wanted to kind of pay tribute to the different eras of the series. But basically, at a certain point, having, kind of really quite enjoyed the Grey sections. They were very effective, but obviously that was quite slow, because it was just, you got to set aside the kind of time to be able to really kind of lock down and kind of invest in that by itself. I got to a protracted Leon kind of segment, right? And then everything sped up, because it's like, no, I'm fine playing this in portable mode. It's very actiony. It's, it's got a very strong, I'm too old for this shit, sort of attitude running through it, basically. Except it's not strictly age that's ailing Leon, but that's basically, the thing. So it's like, I've been through this before. I don't need to go
several
through it
times
again. But yeah, it's like, I'm doing it, right?
As we said on the show, just let him retire.
No. Well, that's the thing. There's very much that is like baked in. They're acknowledging it in a way, right? with the nature of the story. But in terms of honouring or sort of referencing the series past in a way, there's one particular sort of giant boss scenario, because I get a lot of the kind of real, but Grace is all about hiding from things, kind of sneaking around. Leon gets to go head to head with the really, the big nasty monsters and stuff. And there's one in particular, which is, on the one hand, you could say is like, oh, well, it's very Resident Evil, like it's a kind of creature that you fought in Resident Evil before, but it pays tribute specifically to the time-honoured tradition of Resident Evil ripping off Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, where it literally recreates a shot from Return of the King. Like, not just like this thing looks like the cave troll, like in Resident Evil 4. Like here it's like, no, I've seen those films more than enough times to know exactly what shot you're recreating there. And so that I thought was quite fun in its way, because they're quite old, those films at this point. So it's kind of nice to see it brought back in that way. But yeah, the Leon stuff, there's a little, again, I did mention this before, about the sort of the tonal whiplash, when you're kind of trading between the play styles, you do get some of that. Especially there's one part where you're providing cover as Leon. He's got a sniper rifle kind of scenario, and he's giving it all this like, yeah, I've got this. And then I take over and immediately just miss. It was Barry Pepper in Private Ryan. I was not. It was like really, really bad. But he's still swaggering. He's like, oh, I've got, I've got. And so, the thing about that is though, that whole kind of like, Grace is super vulnerable. Leon is super done with this. It does kind of fade when you get to the protracted Leon. So you do get to kind of settle in with him for a while and just kind of have that play out. So, I kind of, that's when I really kind of started to make progress faster. And like, do I prefer that to the other stuff? No, I still feel like it's kind of there. We talked about this with Star Fox, right? To a degree, classic Resident Evil or something like it, you know, that's really kind of like honed in on survival horror and all that is really tough to draw out over a longer format, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if you're making a game like this with the budget it would have taken to make it, this has got to be mass entertainment, right? You have got to sell a lot of copies of this game to make the sums add up, right? And so I guess it can't just be that so much. I mean, I guess I've not played Resident Evil 7, but I guess that's a bit more like they after the apparently absurd excesses of Resident Evil 6, they, reined it, they were at pains to rein it back into something that was, at least trying to be scary and it was more intimate. But like I said, I've not played that.
It and 5 to a lesser degree leaned in. Did 5 have the multiplayer? I know 6
Yeah, absolutely.
Co-op.
The co-op, yeah.
Yeah, like that was their way of like, okay, we'll put online, we'll put multiplayer, we'll get more time out of it that way.
And they were really like sales wise successful, weren't they? That's the thing. Like for all the kind of thing of like 6 kind of became a punchline, and it kind of left you with this feeling from the outside, myself, of like, oh, okay, I guess they're gonna have to like go back to the drawing board after that one. Apparently it sold like the best of any of them, 6, which is just kind of crazy, but apparently it did.
Wow. Yeah, I never touched 6. I never really played 5 either, but I've my last Resident Evil really was 4. I played the remake of the first one, and even I had RE2 remake as well. I liked it. I enjoyed that, but I don't know if I haven't really been pulled in by the modern revival of Resident Evil. Seems like people really like those games, and it does have a feeling. It feels to me like they've gone more mainstream, which is weird. I'm surprised that Resident Evil would kind of be a mainstream breakout hit this deep into the franchise, but it's cool that they've pulled that off.
I mean, the reality of the situation is that nothing that really happens in previous Resident Evils really seemed to matter. So you could just kind of whatever you want in.
It sounds like 7 was like a pretty major reset again, as we said, just creatively, but also in terms of like the kind of story they were trying to do, I guess. But then maybe like with 8, they started trying to say, well, how could this connect back to the characters and the story that we already know? And then, like I said, this one is very much dressing itself in classic Resident Evil references. But I guess again you've got the anniversary factor, and maybe they just is something they feel like they can trade off successfully. I guess it's interesting. It's one of the things I wanted to mention. For me, my Resident Evil experience is pretty limited. I played the second one on N64, that kind of remarkable port of a CD game on a cartridge. It was amazing that it was as intact as it was. And really? I was never like huge on it. It was like there were things I liked about it, there were things I didn't. I liked the atmosphere. I kind of liked the sort of movie references they were working with, the George Romero kind of stuff. I was familiar with that kind of stuff, so it resonated to a fair degree. Obviously, the gameplay was more difficult for me because, I was somebody that didn't play the first Resident Evil, and by the time the second one comes to N64, you've got almost an entire generation, although they were much shorter back then, of playing, navigating 3D space with an analog stick. And then you're playing this game that was not designed with that in mind at all, right? It's basically the same sort of controls as the first one had in 96, when everyone was still trying to figure this out, and PlayStation doesn't even have an analog controller, etc., etc. So it was kind of like, I didn't love it, but I kind of liked some of the things they did with the scenario, where it's like, okay, you've got scenarios A and B, but then there's like which character plays A and who plays B, and so it gave it some more replayability, and they kind of affected each other. Like you could like take an item or a gun or something, or leave it for like essentially yourself when you play through the other scenario and stuff. Like there were clever touches, there were various things that I liked, and I did remember it, very much so. And then of course, Resident Evil's all over GameCube, right? It's Nintendo paid Capcom to make it a Resident Evil extravaganza on GameCube, but I did not really get into any of it until 4. It was just 4 was just the critical reception of that was so overwhelmingly positive. It's like, okay, I've got to play this. And I guess it had a little bit of an in because, of course, the main character was Leon, who was someone I had played, on Resident Evil 2 on N64. And, of course, I did enjoy that very much because it was just a very well executed and very sort of groundbreaking action game, really. And it still had some kind of scares and kind of grotesque kind of stuff in it, but it was definitely much less, a horror game. But that's the real kind of mainline experience I've had. Of course, we've done Revelations as like a retroactive and playing it back when 3DS came out as a spin-off. But the interesting thing for me was here, especially when you get to the end, there's this stretch where it's kind of like getting too much into specifics. It feels like it's like the series is like, now we're going to play the hits. We're going to hit the beats that classic Resident Evil fans know and presumably love and, want to see. And, even for someone like me who's not a huge Resident Evil fan, it kind of worked because it's like, I do remember playing the second game, and that is the biggest part of what it's referencing here. I guess, obviously there's elements, there'll be overlap with 3 because 3 is essentially a paralogue to 2. It's, all happening at the same time. But, it did kind of work on that level of like, I'm kind of, it's calling back to things that I do have this kind of fuzzy memory of, right? But then you kind of put yourself in the place of other people. Is they remade 2 and 3, not literally, obviously, but it feels like 5 fucking minutes ago. So, like, if you played those games like recently, and you got to the bit where they start playing the hits, so you're like, why are we doing this again? You know what I mean? I wonder about that. I wonder if it works the same way. I mean, I guess
that's fair.
It's better than like the fact that remakes exist and came out like, I mean, it's probably quite a few years ago now for the second one, to be fair, but it's better, at least more people will get the references, because obviously original Resident Evil 2, is really quite old and hadn't necessarily been like that available outside of like, I don't know, maybe like PSN classics or something, or, so obviously stuff like the GameCube remake and Zero and all, like, they've been very available. Capcom have maintained a pretty sort of easy catalogue of stuff on every platform for stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, it worked on me. Up to kind of any level that I would have expected. It was obviously technically very impressive throughout. It does feel like you're kind of seeing, like, what are next gen, relative to where Nintendo hardware's been before. This is kind of action.
Are you talking about Requiem now?
Yes.
The newest one. Okay.
Yeah. Just for me, playing 9, now you have that, you're left with that feeling of like, this is action and just detail and on a scale that you just haven't seen on Nintendo hardware before, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty impressive. But no, it just for me, there was one moment, I think, where the kind of, obviously it hinges a lot on the upscaling, the super sampling, to kind of make it work. The internal resolution is like not that high. There was one part in Leon's section, the big protracted section, where like there was just this like brown mist in a corner. I'm like, what the hell is that? And then it's like you get close to it, and it's like it's meant to be like kind of with the dead kind of branches. And I guess the upscaler just didn't know what the fuck to do with it. It just like,
nice.
It just kind of looked at that and went, nope, I don't know what that is. It's a brown mist now. It's
my favorite.
Very, very rare cases of something like that. But generally, I played by the time we got to the Leon stuff, quite a lot of that portably, and I was really impressed, with how well it held up. Obviously, not having played it or similar games on PS5 or anything, but just for those purposes, like I thought it, did a really quite a good job. So yeah, for me, it was really cool to be able to play something like this at launch, in a sort of technically kind of competent way, for a game that, the production values and, all the kind of artistry that goes into it is just really, really impressive.
Nice.
Would you say, Greg, it's kind of a showcase for Switch 2 hardware?
I think you're of a certain sort, right? You know what I mean? Because, like I said, there's definitely elements of like the image quality and stuff that feel, there's trickery going on. You know what I mean? Like definitely some of the way things look, with motion and, like I said, that one particular like extreme case, and that was on portable mode. It might not have been, quite the same on if I'd been playing that particular part docked. But overall, it's holding up really well, and it is, like I said, it's on the same scale and complexity and everything. I'm sure there's cutbacks. I mean, obviously we've talked plenty of times about like, the hair isn't going to be like, as stranded as, as in, rendering like individual strands or whatever, as like on, a PS5. And various effects have to be dialed back, and things have to be kind of pared back, to that populate the environment and stuff, and probably some like detail pop in and all these different things that they've got to kind of dial back. But it's from everything I've read of other people's experience, comparing the versions and just what I was playing, like is the experience, and it's here, in your hands portably. And I think that is, I'm sure there's others as well. Star Wars Outlaws, I think, ended up turning out pretty well. And that's, very expansive. And, so different things will be different ways, right? This is obviously more cinematic, more about kind of the detail at times, where it's like the gore, the sweat tension and stuff like that. So, it has a sort of flashiness to it that maybe games that are more just about sheer scale of like a huge open environment or whatever don't quite have. So yeah, in that case, it probably is one of the better showcases for a certain kind of thing. But then, say for instance, you go and play some DK Bonanza after, like, they had the next Emerald Rush thing recently. The sort of verisimilitude of that image hits you a lot, right? Because it's actually rendering at that resolution. You know what I mean? It looks so clean. It looks so crisp by comparison. But when you're in it, like, and you're playing it and you're just kind of involved in that atmosphere, especially like with a horror game like this, you just, after a while, you kind of get inured to whatever kind of peculiarities of image quality there may be about the upscaling they're doing, and you just go with it. Certainly I do anyway. Yeah. I mean, for people with better televisions and more acute, visions and understanding of all this stuff, maybe it's harder to put to one side, but it was easy enough for me.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I hadn't thought about it, but you brought up a great point that, like, this is a brand new Resident Evil game being released on the Switch on day one.
Yeah.
And even on Switch 1, the previous generation, we didn't really see that kind of thing happen very much.
And not as like some weird cloud form either. Like,
yeah, that was basically the most you could. You had the back catalogue and then you had the cloud versions. That's the most you could get.
I find this very encouraging. I mean, we talked about this a lot, like a year ago before Switch 2 launched, that this might be what Nintendo's going for in targeting the specs and leaning on the upscaling the way that they did for Switch 2, is like maybe they're trying to create a pathway for people to simultaneously or soon after release the same games on their system as on other platforms. And that's something that I think a lot of developers really struggled with on Switch. Some were able to do it in kind of sneaky way. It kind of
Yeah.
made the compromises you had to, and a lot of times we waited a long time. And we kind of you've got things like Doom Eternal that people are just saying, well, it's an amazing port. It also took a long time for it to come out on that platform, and obviously that tells you something about the level of effort required to get it working that well on that hardware. And I think with Switch 2, at least for now, it seems like they managed to hit a sweet spot where some of these developers can include it in the primary development pipeline, and that's, I think, for the big third-party games, that's really nice to see. It's something I don't think we've had much of that since GameCube, where you had like
No, not really.
major multi-platform third-party releases coming out on the Nintendo platform the same day as everything else, and like a feature equivalent version. Like maybe it's not the best looking one, maybe it looks better than some versions and not others, but it's not like last year's Madden, you know. So that's I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's actually pretty cool that you're playing the brand new Resident Evil on your Switch 2. Very impressed by it, and pleased with the experience. That is kind of tells me something about where the platform is right now, and maybe what the next few years might be like. That's kind of cool.
And I guess, I mean, you would think, especially among the big Japanese developers, there would be an attractiveness there of like, because the Switch platform and certainly to this point the Switch 2 is all off to a very, very fast start in Japan, especially, because I think it's already crossed 5 million units sold, and that they would be attractive, to have the capacity to hit their domestic markets more with stuff like the Final Fantasy VII remake kind of trilogy, this for Capcom and things. I would have thought in particular those kinds of partners would be pleased, but as we've seen, it's not kind of limited to that either. Like I said, with Ubisoft and if you got stuff like Assassin's Creed and Star Wars Outlaws and so forth. So, but of course, in the first year, you get a lot of dipping of toes in the water. How ultimately these things have got to be weighed up in terms of risk and return, and I guess we'll see in the years to come just how much it actually adds up for any of them. But I think it's a promising start.
Yeah, I mean, they're Nintendo, especially you said Switch 2 has been particularly successful in Japan, where it costs significantly less than anywhere else on Earth.
Well, it obviously the point with that, isn't it? Is the problem is if they priced it at some sort of parity, which there is like the international version or whatever, right? It's, that can be bought in Japan where it doesn't only work in the Japanese language and stuff. But if they priced it like that in general, it would just be unaffordable for typical Japanese consumers, right? Because it's just that's the problem with the absolute drop in the value of the yen. It's just that if you have it maintain any kind of the very divergent monetary policy of the Japanese authorities has left us in a place where
any decade now it will succeed, Greg. Just any
they have their reasons. But the point is, it leaves Nintendo in a spot where it's like, hey, if we want sort of normal kind of demographics to be able to afford this in Japan, we're going to have to find a way to essentially undercut it, relative to everywhere else in the world. So on the one hand, I'm sure they're very pleased that they've sold as many Switches as they have in Japan. And of course, that means they sell games along with it and all that kind of stuff. I bet they would love to be able to just balance it out a little bit differently and have a few more coming in from the US and Europe and so forth.
But some of the underlying factors here, like the fact that it's impossible to get chips, although it's gotten a little bit better, might make it so that they can maintain not parity, but in the ballpark, because I earnestly believe Microsoft and Sony are going to push back whatever their plans for next hardware are, because do you want to try to launch hardware right now? It's going to be $1,000. And that's not me like BSing you. You could not launch a new console right now for less than $1,000 for the targets they're going to try to hit.
For what Microsoft is doing with their new system, where it's going to, probably be a Windows machine and play PC games, they might be targeting $1,000. But I agree with you, they might have to delay it by 6 months or a year so that they can actually get the price down that low, down to that low price of $1,000 for the next Xbox. Because the components, especially on the high end, are pretty brutal. Right
and
now.
$1,000. What's going to be your market? Because like the PS5 and God, the Xbox Series did not come roaring out of the gates. Now, granted, there was a whole thing going on at that point you may have forgotten about, but I'm just saying, what's that going to be when these things are effectively 100% premium on the launch price of their predecessors?
Yeah.
Like
no, well, and that's the thing for Switch 2, I guess you've got to say, is that we've seen, as you said, like the transition PS4, PS5 generation was kind of the softest yet, in terms of like PS4 versions persisted for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
In that scenario, one can only assume that PS5 to PS6 will be it's softer still. And
hold my very soft beer is what we're going to be at with this one.
And therefore, if you can, if here we are now, and you can have things like Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil 9, can be on Switch 2 with a pretty high degree of parity with the PS5, which is like the primary platform for the game. That means that it could be kind of within that kind of reaching distance of games for some considerable time yet. And therefore still be able to get third-party support if software sales and the health of the platform is maintained for that length of time.
It's and I wonder what Sony's plans are, because there's always been this talk of like, will it be a portable version of their next console that plays previous gen games, but it's going to be numbered the same. It's like, what the fuck are you even on? But it's a weird situation where, while Nintendo obviously doesn't want to have to raise the price of the Switch 2, that would be bad. Don't want to do that. May be inevitable, but want to try to put it off as long as possible. It does mean they might have more time to be, not like I said, not parody, but invited to the party, for lack of a better word. And if you can build up your platform enough and build up your moat deep enough, you might keep getting it invited to the party anyway, even when it becomes obnoxious for developers to try to make their game work on your system. So they might. This is a double-ended sword for them right now, or double-edged sword for them right now. A double-ended sword would be very difficult to maintain.
That's Darth Maul stuff, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Right. My impression is that Nintendo is actually in a really good position right now in the marketplace. So we'll see what they do with it. I think I would like to see them be a little more aggressive with the portfolio on the games. Like maybe just trying more new things. Like I can't fault them for being esoteric with stuff like bringing back Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven in the summer. Like that's good stuff. So I give them credit for that. But like, I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to say like, why don't they make where's the next Splatoon or something like that? But it feels like I don't know. Maybe Bonanza is the new Splatoon.
Did that Splatoon DLC ever come out? I can't even remember.
The Splatoon Raiders has been announced.
Splatoon Raiders, yes, not DLC, it's a game. Yeah.
A spin-off game, seemingly different kind of emphasis, but they really haven't gone into details yet. So we'll have to see.
They haven't shown anything of it. Really.
Yeah, what that really kind of involves. But for me, I think probably there's a certain irony to this because I really enjoyed this game, but I think probably the big miss so far in the software lineup, strictly from a commercial point of view, and strictly from the outside of Japan point of view, because again, there's some significant asymmetries there. Is Kirby Air Riders. Like, really, I think you needed something different in that spot than that.
Yes.
Basically, if you wanted to sell if you want to juice the numbers for Switch 2 outside of Japan, you needed something different in that spot, because it in many ways is very different from Mario Kart, but it's could certainly be kind of perceived as kind of overlapping it to a fair degree, and it does overlap it to some degree. And it's one of these things. In Japan, it's sold, I think overall at the moment that the last quarterly report, it sold somewhere just shy of 2 million copies worldwide. But the split is where it gets, you really illustrates the difference. Because I think basically at that point it had sold in Japan about the same amount as Bonanza had sold in Japan. But whereas Kirby Air Rider sales outside of Japan were essentially equal to the sales in Japan, Bonanza sales outside of Japan are 5 times as big as they are inside Japan. So you see, the thing is, like, when you have that slot at the end of the calendar year, the run up to the holidays, the international markets where you're thinking you're going to do a lot of business, and that revenue is literally worth more, because the currencies are worth more. You probably needed something with more appeal there than Kirby Air Riders could provide as a resurrection of a somewhat obscure, not again, mostly leveraged on its popularity in Japan, but a lot of the most obscure GameCube games, but not one of the most prominent. And obviously GameCube wasn't that successful in the first place. So yeah, I think that is probably the biggest one. I think the other stuff, a lot of it has accomplished what it kind of needed to, in terms of Mario Kart World, of course. Just, a huge deal, had to be there, I think, and I think whatever shortcomings some people might perceive there is, I think it gets a lot of things right, and it's still set up to be kind of expanded potentially in the future as well, and that it is performing as the evergreen seller that one would expect. And then, Bonanza, I think, did its job. And, stuff like Switch 2 editions of Pokemon Legends, Z to A, I think, did its job, and so on and so forth. But that one, I feel that's a big window, that holiday season. And I think Kirby Air Riders is a bloody enjoyable game, but it's not really what you know. I've no idea if this was sort of feasible at all, but I think what you really would have loved in an ideal scenario, something there, if it wasn't going to be the really obvious stuff like the new 3D Mario, the new 3D Zelda, which never seemed likely given, the timelines involved, would be like a Luigi's Mansion 4, right? Something that is a visual showcase, something that has proven commercial sort of pedigree. When you look at especially how well 3 sold on Switch, that was a big, big hit. And of course, that big name ID character kind of globally, especially after the movie. So that, I think, it would have been like the ideal kind of thing they have there. They didn't have it. So now, I guess. To be
fair, Greg, I feel like in the first year of that system coming out, it's still, even back when Kirby Air Riders came out, I feel like Switch 2 is a bit supply constrained in certain markets, or I guess I feel like not having the ideal holiday game, you can kind of get away with it that first year, but I don't think they can do that again this year. It would be a bigger problem. There'd be a lot more lost revenue if they don't have a big hit this holiday season.
Well, I suppose the thing about the first however many months, especially, we've talked about this plenty of times, we've never gone such a long time with so little new Nintendo hardware to buy before. Because they used to have 2 hardware lines, right? And they keep revising them. You get your DS Lites, your DSIs, and all that. And we had some of that with Switch, Switch Lite, and some different colours and OLED and all that. But it was way down from where we used to be. So I think the length of the Switch generation, the fact that it was only one hardware line, you had big pent up demand of, enthusiastic Nintendo players to go out and buy the new thing. I wouldn't quite say irrespective of the exclusive software, because I'm sure that isn't the case, but, it wasn't like entirely leveraged on that, right? There's some of just like, I want to buy the new Nintendo thing because I haven't bought a new Nintendo thing in a long time. And, it does have exclusive software. It does play my old games better in some cases or whatever, right? So that can carry you a certain distance in the early going. And it has, I think, right, especially outside of Japan. One has to worry about the momentum of that, how sustainable is it? And then at that point, you're more dependent on killer, exclusive, system seller games maintaining the pace, right? So I do think you're quite right there that it may be more of an issue this time. And especially, I think, more of an issue because, as the price of their systems has gone up, I think Nintendo, and that's just natural, right? I guess they've got to kind of, keep pace to some extent, even if it's somewhat on a lag, like with where the industry is, and if they and to be able to, give themselves the opportunity to craft meaningfully, new and different experiences. But I feel like the price has got to a place where it's less like of any kind of impulse buy or anything at Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, now that it's this high, I think you're going to be less sort of profiting less from previous Nintendo kind of systems that were more like, okay, yeah, I want to buy someone a gift, and this is within a range that's like I can afford. This is much more like, I feel like you've got to be more purposeful about it. You know what I mean? You've got to have like a specific like use in mind for it when it's getting to the levels that it is at now. And therefore, again, I think the more kind of compelling exclusive software is going to have to pull its weight certainly at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys already talk about the rumor of the Ocarina of Time remake?
No. It happened when we had our unplanned outage.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
But it's the same source as Star Fox, so I sit here with my large amount of salt. But that's
fair enough. I mean, I understand that some other outlets have sort of independently verified, so they say.
But I don't know what the value of that remake is. Like, why are we remaking that game a fucking again? Like,
I think my hope would be that it's like an actual remake. Like I never had a ton of interest in the 3DS version because they did make some nice quality of life.
It's definitely the best way to play that game. But
the graphics are touched up more than I would have expected, honestly. But for me, the Majora's Mask was a more interesting remaster, and that's the one I played. But I guess the rumor is that for Ocarina's, it's not anniversary, but just I guess they feel like it's time.
Yeah, I guess like it's
not quite the anniversary.
It's close to the anniversary of when they first might have thought they'd launch it, like. Because we were waiting a long time back then. I mean, I think probably the first time it had a really like hard date was in 97, realistically, and then it ended up being the back end of 98, which again in those days that was a massive, huge delay, preposterous.
Oh
really,
yeah,
with how games usually came out at a fast clip. But at some point, probably back when they thought the N64 would come out in 95, they might have imagined Zelda would come along in 96.
Right. That's when they showed that's when we first saw that demo footage, of Link opening the Triforce and all that stuff, that never made it into the final game. But yeah, I've been thinking about this remake rumor a little bit, and I think I come down like, if they're gonna, not that it has much to do with Resident Evil, but like if they're gonna lean on the fidelity and the lighting capabilities, and like if they're really gonna push the hardware and make it sort of a graphical showcase, I think that would be cool. Like obviously it's a game a lot of us know extremely well. We've played it multiple times. I wouldn't expect radical changes to the game world or the story or any of that, but maybe it's interesting enough if they just make it extremely beautiful and sort of overhaul the presentation of the game to make it feel like a modern.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a very interesting question, is it? Because it's like, okay, one could look at it as quite analogous to the Final Fantasy VII remakes that we, had mentioned, and I played through the first chapter.
Those are rather liberal remakes.
Exactly,
they're like completely reimagine the original.
And Nintendo's not going to spend $200 million.
Oh no, not a trilogy.
Ain't no way.
Nintendo is not going to be
Here's our $250 million
for that kind of profligacy. Absolutely not. But I guess the question is this: do you try and package the game as it's that game that's got this enormous name recognition and kind of mind share as like one of the landmark achievements of its era, right? That's right. What Final Fantasy VII was. That's what Ocarina of Time was, all right, for its...
Oh, yeah.
But, to a large degree, and not to that degree if we're talking about Nintendo, because, again, they're just not profligate like that. But you would say, let's actually loosen the game up a bit and go in there and keep the scenario, and the whole idea is we're going to realise that world more with much more kind of vivid graphics and sound and all that kind of stuff, but to actually get in there and change the design of it in certain areas, I feel like maybe then it has more interest. I feel like if it's primarily just graphical, I don't really see it, because as everybody knows, that formula was iterated on so very much that and itself was already an iteration of Link to the Past to a larger degree, right? It's like, yes, right. It was bringing it into 3D, and that was a huge deal, and it had big consequences for combat and dungeon design and puzzles and everything. But it was still a version of a template, an iteration and a template that already existed. And then we had, Wind Waker, for all its aesthetic, boldness.
Oh, but Greg, you don't even have to go to Wind Waker, right? I mean, Ocarina of Time is a game that Nintendo themselves tried to remix, and that didn't work. Yes. And so the remix became the sequel, which is itself, in a lot of ways, a remix, although a very twisted, creative remix on that. And then they eventually put out the remix, the actual remix too.
As a bonus.
Like I said, why do we need to do this game again? Any other game, not this one.
That's fair.
I guess the biggest thing, I guess, is how does one think about Twilight Princess, right? Because Twilight Princess is what people apparently call today a requel, right? Where it's like, well, technically it's a sequel in that it follows on from the events of a previous thing, but really we just kind of want to remake it. And
I mean, it's the Star Fox 64 problem of like every game after Star Fox 64 is Star Fox 64. It's like, well, in a way, yeah, kinda, but yeah, it's bad in Twilight Princess. It's really...
It's not like Twilight Princess doesn't have original ideas.
No.
It's that people don't like the original ideas as much as they did in the other Zelda games, and that's
Well,
that's
I guess the point would be though is like we might think of Twilight Princess a certain way in terms of we remember it. It was a big deal. We played it, and kind of critiqued it or whatever at that time.
It's actually a fantastic game.
It's a bloody old game now, though, isn't it? It's 20 years old. You know what I mean? At the end of the year, I guess,
Peter Jackson's Twilight Princess. Yes.
If we put ourselves in a position of just the point is Ocarina of Time feels really old to me because I was still young when it happened, right? And then when Twilight Princess happens, I'm an adult, and I was a young man, much younger than I am now, obviously, but I was an adult. So to me, it's very much like these two things are from completely different eras of the world, but today they're all fucking old, and so maybe it's just a feeling of like, well, yes, Twilight Princess exists, but that is not any kind of obstacle or disqualifier for making another kind of pass at realizing that world in a more vivid way with the sort of tools that are at your disposal at that given moment. But for those of us that did go through it, it does make it seem like a less interesting prospect. I think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and that's partly why I've been kind of ambivalent about the idea just thinking through it, since this is still in rumor territory. But I really hope you're right, Greg. I hope that they do go in and tinker with it. And like I said, I don't expect them to rewrite the story and add on a new kingdom for you to explore or anything like that. But certainly Hyrule Field and the world of that game being re-rendered in a modern way would make it feel different. It would make it, I'm sure they'd have to make it bigger.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the
they'd have to
biggest thing, isn't it? Really,
fill it up with more stuff.
The
because the world
overworld
will be
seems
bigger.
like it's like
Yeah.
okay.
There's a lot of just nothing.
This has to be
Yeah.
kind of recontextualized. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
whole it may seem quaint now, to people that didn't go through it, but at the time it was genuine, and you will have heard us say it over the years and other people. Just setting foot out into that expanse was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
It's like looking up at Brontosaurus in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, exactly. It was a landmark moment again, but that isn't really going to count for anything if you just
They're
have
not-
it look.
They're not going to pull that off again.
Look, no, but and of course they've got to do something because they're going to be building up to the Zelda movie. This time next
That
year.
movie is going to be terrible. Let's be clear. I think I'm putting the cards on the table
terrible,
now.
but they're still going to have the same, approach of like we need to have something, that kind of leads into it. Right? Obviously, with the Mario sequel this time, it was the sort of whatever you want to call them, really, the ports of the Galaxy games. So it wasn't anything massive, was it? It wasn't that kind of comprehensive.
They did just rebundle it with Switch, so like they are like, yeah, it's still here. We still made it.
Yeah,
or Switch 2 rather.
But it's got to be something, right? So
Right.
that much is clear, and that's what kind of makes it an easy, quote unquote, easy sort of thing to predict / speculate, about what would happen there. But something has got to be there, and I understand how this is being kind of talked about, but. I guess the question is it... and the other thing, of course, is that we all expect that the major Zelda, next Zelda is going to be some time because it's always a massive undertaking, right? So
Yeah.
How do you kind of buy time for stuff like that? Well, it's with projects like this. I mean, look at Dragon Quest, right? They're just stringing together the remakes while the 12th
Literally
game is
bundling
still...
them together in some cases.
Yes, well, the 12th game is, clearly, taking an awful lot to produce.
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier tonight, actually, for some reason, something made me think about Dragon Quest XI and how it was the first Nintendo Switch game ever announced, if you'll recall, back in
it was
2014 or 2015 or something like
because
that.
they didn't have a name for the console yet, so they called it Nintendo's Next System or whatever.
Right. And so that's how long ago Dragon Quest XI was announced, and Dragon Quest XII still hasn't been shown. In fact, I don't know if they've really formally announced it, but I mean, it's obviously... It's
I
being
think...
worked on,
I think there was a logo, right? It was like a fiery 12, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's about it.
It's a step in the right direction.
It's I would say it's... I suppose the natural thing to say would be that it's 3 times as good as the 4 from Metroid Prime 4. But,
okay.
I mean, whether it is that, I don't know, but at least it had fire, because the 4 was very nondescript.
Yeah. The Zelda, I keep coming back to the Zelda thing. I mean, if they really did go in and, like, redo the mechanics, that could be intriguing, because it would be the first sort of traditional 3D Zelda game. Obviously, Ocarina was the first one, but it's very traditional. But it would be them bringing that style of Zelda game into the modern world for the first time since Skyward Sword, I guess, which was more than 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And for all the people who don't like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, certainly we love them, but I do have a lot of sympathy for people who want to change a pace and want Zelda to maybe, go back. And I think it would be fascinating to see Ocarina of Time used as a way to kind of figure out what what a not so open world, not so no guardrails kind of a Zelda game might look like in the modern day with modern hardware.
Well, and of course,
it'd be really interesting to see the decisions they make on how to do that.
I hope it involves 20 minutes wrestling a goat or trying to find a cat. Those are my favorite parts.
You've got to have that slice of life in the village, James.
Oh my god! I just want to kill all the goats
You've got
by the
to
end of that
feel
segment.
what a great place Hobbiton, Ordom Village, is. In order to want to save it.
Hey, they brought it back at the end when you wrestle giant Ganon goat.
It's Chekhov's goat herding. Right. You can't argue with it.
It's almost stupider that they brought it back.
But I mean, the thing we've got to remember, we have to plenty of time, is just like Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom represent a step change in the commercial success of Zelda.
Yes.
And therefore, any remake of Ocarina of Time, you kind of feel like, surely it would have some sort of DNA of that in there. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're going to try and kind of bridge the gap. We're going to try, so we're going to have a certain amount of stuff here for people who know Zelda through those games, and kind of to use certain elements from Breath of the Wild. Might be like some of how Link. Link sort of physicality in those games or something, translates, and then put it into that more conventional structure, what was conventional to us, that structure from the 90s of an older game where, you do things in a specific order and, kind of all that sort of thing. And that's obviously just speculation, but that you feel like that perhaps would be the approach is like, okay, let's try and, migrate people that have certain expectations about Zelda to, back to this earlier kind of version of it and fuse them together in a way that maybe even, a bunch of people might find interesting. But that sounds pretty involved at the same time,
Yeah, like, that's a big project.
And if we're just kind of spinning this up to fill a spot in the release slate for this year and to get people, sort of just in that Zelda state of mind before the movie comes out, that might be beyond the scope of what's reasonable to expect.
Yeah, I also would say I wouldn't be shocked if this. I do think this is probably going to happen within the next couple of years. Would not be surprised if it got, maybe the rumor's true and it is planned for this year. Wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed to closer to the movie release. And then that would give them more time, or maybe closer to the actual 30th anniversary of Ocarina, which would be 2028.
I would be horribly disappointed if this was their play, because unless they're gonna go in there and be like, we're remaking Ocarina of Time, and if it's your favorite game, fuck you, we're doing weird shit, we do it.
Please subvert me. I mean, I'm a Majora's Mask fan, so I'm ready for it. Subvert my expectations.
I'm done with that game. Legitimately, y'all have done it a lot. Over dependence on that game. Do something cool. Do something remake some shit that needs to be remade. That's kind of my thought process. Remake something that's just really fucked up. Don't remake something that's it's
Stunt Race FX.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's go. Stunt Race.
Let's make it happen.
It's going to run at 20 frames per second.
No. You've got to go max. 120. Let's use the 120 mode.
That's not true to the spirit of the game.
No, but that's what we go. What was it originally? Single digits? I forget.
Pretty much.
Favorably, it was 10. Let's why don't Mario Kart, we joke about how much we miss the CCs that are just completely uncontrollable, like 200. What if it's just a slider you can set? What frame rate do you want Stunt Race FX to run at? And it starts at 10, and you can slide it all the way up to whatever the Switch 2 can handle. And
I guess you could do that. That's a question for Seren, but if you can cap the frame rate, seems like you could make a slider in a menu that lets you change where the cap is.
But to
that degree.
Here's the important part. I don't want you to adjust the programming to account for this at all. So I'm going for, in the spirit of 200cc, 200 frame rate. Let's see what happens in Sunrise FX.
Well, also you could manually dial in PAL mode.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's go. What would PAL mode have been for that? Like 7?
Yeah, I guess when it's that slow in the first place, that cut is not really that big of a cut anymore, is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm more thinking about just the viewable play area, because it's like, well, I don't know, did it? Because obviously stuff like Star Fox, which I did have the Japanese
home
version
computer
of.
shit.
The Japanese version of Star Fox on my Super Famicom, that was heavily letterbox, right? Because it could only render, that much of a viewable play area at a time. It was just struggling that much to do real time, kind of polygonal graphics. But presumably you'd still have the PAL letterbox thing as well. So you squish it down inside. So it must have been very small, unless there was some cases, I think, where there were compensations made for that kind of thing on Super Nintendo in the PAL territory, but I'm not really familiar with them.
Is Nintendo self-aware enough to say the phrase Stunt Race FX Definitive Edition? Because I don't think they
did Virtual Boy, okay?
They didn't just do Virtual Boy. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I have one too. So there are no rules left to break, okay? Anything is possible.
I did try to do stuff in the Virtual Boy that's not meant for it, and I am full of regrets.
Isn't Stunt Race FX like a Miyamoto joint?
I mean, he was involved with a lot of shit on the console at that point, so I wouldn't be shocked.
I guess. I mean, obviously, Star Fox was already, that kind of collaboration, so it wouldn't shock me terribly much if that was the case. But I'm really happy that did get onto NSO, though, because obviously for so many years, those FX games did not show up on the Wii Virtual Console, right? So it was like they were just everything else came back. Like first party stuff mostly. There were exceptions, of course. But they didn't. And then, with the Super Nintendo Mini was like the damn kind of breaking, right? Where it's like, well, not only we got Star Fox, we got Star Fox 2.
Yeah.
We can do anything.
So, Greg, do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up for this?
No, it's just good, unexpectedly sprawling, but I suppose it all ties back to things that were, in the late 90s and, may or may not be getting paid tribute to today, as far as Resident Evil, Requiem and Ocarina of Time maybe getting remade.
All right, fair enough. I am going to spare you all talking about Pocopia again, because that's all I am doing. It is a problem. I should be free of it by this time next week. God, please. I'm literally at the whims of RNG at this point. So, on that, I think we're going to call the show here. Johnny, thank you for joining us this week.
Of course, it's great.
Yeah, it was awesome. Greg, it was great to have you back.
Oh, yeah, very good to be back.
And on that, hopefully we will have John back next week. Guillaume will still be out, but that's going to do it for us. Greg, what's our music to see us off?
Well, Johnny alluded to it a little bit, I think, just earlier on. We did get a date today for Rhythm Heaven Groove. Right, so obviously it was previously announced, the next edition, the installment in the Rhythm Heaven series. And, there we've got the date, which is going to be the 2nd of July, which is just a month out from the 20th anniversary of the first Rhythm Tengoku game. There was right at the start of August in 2006. Of course, Japan only on the Game Boy Advance, because basically NOA had shut up shop on GBA stuff. Anyway, I mean, it would have been a sizable localization, no doubt, at that time. And obviously that did begin to happen with the next installment on DS. But I thought, well, this would be a nice time to pick something out from the Rhythm Heaven sort of history of songs again, because we haven't used it terribly many times in the
it's been a bit.
Many years that we've been doing the closing music now. So I decided to go with something from this. The tricky thing about Rhythm Heaven is, do you go with what is referred to as the perfect mix, which is just like, okay, if you play in the game and you're hitting every action exactly, where you should be. So it's kind of sound effects type of stuff in the music. Or do you go with kind of just what's really just the music, underneath that by itself? And I go back and forth on different mini games. It's some things I just feel like the sound effect type stuff that accompanies your actions a kind of indispensable part of the music. And then in other cases, like, no, this kind of works without it. And some of the, sound effects, obviously, a lot of the time the actions you're doing are absurd. So you kind of have these silly sound effects that out of context are, maybe a little bit grating or something. So this is one that's just the music underneath all the actions from Rhythm Heaven Fever, the Wii game. And it's actually the second iteration of the hole-in-one golf scenario where everything's pink. But it's I would say, it's a relatively rare case where I actually like the second iteration more than the first. And I think it's definitely makes it a bit more suitable for closing music because it's just got a little bit more pep to it in the second iteration in this case. But just so much enjoyable music in this series. It's nice to work something in again here as we get ready for the launch of the next one.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.